So as I tried to express at the beginning of the retreat, that I did make a verbal slip. The idea is to continue the retreat through the rest of our lives, and to have that sense of that. Therefore, what does this period mean? Since in some ways, the forms will change. So what does this period mean? In some respects, movement will change, speed will change, conversations will change, matters arising will change, And how do we, not get that sense of, practice is over, now get back to work. How do we try to really recognise, that even this incredible privilege of having so much time to put aside many duties, still duties are really part of everybody's life. And to deny that would be a gross fallacy. And how do we integrate that sense of collective responsibility, duty, management, cooperation, carrying responsibility, personal responsibility, ethics, and actually pragmatic, what do you say? I'd like to say the word efficiency, but that's a high standard. But it's aiming for that, to be circumspect and conscientious. So we actually are trying to look into the granular details where it needs to be looked at and tuned in, without thinking, this is just worldly stuff. Worldly stuff, we are living and benefiting from what we call worldly stuff. People's donations, building codes, health regulations, safety checks, we're in that. The summer life cannot exist without the lay life to support it. We can't, and that means somehow an integration of, how do we cooperate with that? And it's always been amazing to me, from day one, just walking into a monastery in Thailand. They said, come in, stay as long as you like, free, here's the precepts. Just total support in material terms. No question about it. And beauty is nobody's really organising, it's just organised by faith and respect. And so in Britain, it's technically a non-Buddhist culture, but still amazing that Sangha Trust and these committees, people offering their service for free, great dedication, great enthusiasm to just help us live the holy life. It's just eye-wateringly amazing, the efforts that take to, and the integrity and the detail it takes to actually make sure these things work, and asking for nothing in return. And so we don't have to teach. You just live the holy life. And wow, and from day one, that feeling of, I got to raise up. I got to rise up. I got to rise up. And certainly, the first few years, that was about it, really. I mean, practice was very difficult because it was went from one kind of set of values or non-values. Basically, the counterculture of the 60s and 70s, where it's find your own truth, conventions and customs are to be dismissed, find your own truth. This kind of late romantic beat kind of genre, where just, responsibility, ethics didn't really matter, and most things to find your own truth, be authentic to that and follow that. And you come from that into, suddenly deep end monastery precepts, and then, in my case, just complete isolation, kuti, on my own, with doing this rather intensive Burmese satipatthana, which is really pretty intensive. It's detailed, focusing on point in the abdomen, day after day after, nothing else to do. Eat the meal, that was it. Gee, that's such a huge kind of lurch from one kind of freewheeling to complete constriction in one step. So, what am I saying, really? And to me, the most valuable experiences in all that, well, certainly the meditation was good at discipline, but it was pretty tough. Two things was, one, bindabat, arms round, just walking out into the town and seeing people just pull themselves together at 5 o'clock in the morning, come out and offer food with didn't even want to say anything, just offer food. The other was patimokkha. You sit with a group of people I didn't know in this kind of sacred place, which could have been any time, any place in the last 2,000 years, listening to these ancestral chants. You're thinking, wow, you're in something big here. And it's not following your own truth. It's following the ways of the wise and the human goodness. Nothing personal about it in that sense. So from one very extreme of extreme personality, where everybody has to fashion their own, exactly their own way, into something that's almost impersonal. This is the tradition. Who we are as an individual doesn't really matter much. Into something else. But certainly, one kind of, over time you begin to kind of refine some of that, because the person does matter. Even though, in detail it doesn't really exist as a permanent quality. We do have there's an interior domain and an external domain. And just as the world itself is a kind of shuffling mass of perceptions and feelings, there's something there. And just as the internal world is a matter of shuffling perceptions and feelings, there's something there. And the aim is to bring the two together so there's some sense of, in that cooperation, the extremes of the internal domain, which can get very intense and obsessive, and the extremes of the external domain, which can also get extremely obsessive and possess the heart, are levelled out through the Dhamma, which spreads over both domains. And kind of this is what, in my sense, the holy life is about. One take of it. And so you really kind of purifying both those territories. Tendency to either dismiss the world or get engrossed with it, dismiss the person or get engrossed with it. And moderate awareness of that. An ongoing sense of urgency. So, which must be essential. If we don't have a sense of urgency, then the life kind of goes flat, and the fire dies out. How to maintain urgency without getting tensely panic tight about it all. Through this moderating these two domains, so not super me, nor are we kind of super intensive on the monastery's this, it's got to be that, somehow just really the monastery flexes in accordance with the people within it. The people within it flex in accordance with the monastery. And the monastery is really the community, the living human community within this ongoing movement. So we look at the monastery, really it's more like a culture. How does that culture be modified and flexed in accordance with human needs, human blind spots, human intensities? How does the individual become moderated in accordance with the culture? So it's an ongoing dialogue, you could say, a wordless dialogue we're entering into. And the urgency to keep that sense of attentiveness. So that, and this is kind of the how this Buddha Dhamma can continue. It's strong roots and yet a sense of, how it modifies in accordance with particular cultures and needs. Otherwise it becomes a kind of museum piece. But if it doesn't keep in line with the roots, it becomes just another new wave movement that kind of rises and dissolves. So it's this, and then we are, each of us as individuals and as a corporate, are carrying that, if you like, responsibility. It sounds heavy, but that attentiveness. And so during the quiet time we probably put a bit more, let's look really, do some reset of the internal domain. You kind of tend to shift onto that leg, the two-legged beast, the internal domain. Reset what's redundant, what's worn out, what's still painful and unattended to. So that that naturally then that changes the nature of the apparent person. As I said, the person is not completely an internal creature alone. The person does act, and what she or he says or does definitely has effects. If we take anatta to its kind of an ideological extreme, you get the kind of crazy wisdom stuff whereby it doesn't matter what I do because I'm beyond it all. And then you get this kind of ongoing taint of abuse, which all religions, Buddhism included, are prone to. Because I'm entitled, then power, sex, money. That's what it always goes down to. Always. You can see that. Any, doesn't matter what the religion is, There's human beings behind it. And always you simply get that sense of complacency or attainment or supremacy or final establishment beyond it all. then some of that ethical clarity and responsibility and self-questioning fades out. And the urgency is to keep that awake. It doesn't mean getting intense, it means keeping that awake. Whether you're standing, walking, going to work, having the meal, talking to people, that sense, just something in the back of the mind, keeping on wakeful. And not intense. So, for example, very occasionally now, I might try some calligraphy because I find that just looking at suttas, I'd like to dwell upon the words, even just a few words, and turn them over. And if it's written out in a clear, interesting way, it makes it much more rewarding to look at it and consider it. Often I think most of us have little notebooks where you've got one sutta or a couple of phrases or something really struck. So I like to, occasionally do that. But when you do calligraphy, it's quite an interesting exercise because, they must be very precise, and yet relaxed. Because it's, it means go into it. It starts with the way your shoulder is, and that starts with the way your posture is. You have to have a particular posture. So your arms are relaxed, they're connected to your back, and then the arm is relaxed because the arm is part of the movement of how the hand will operate. If there's any dragging or resistance or tension in the arm, that's going to affect the hand, that will affect the nib, that will affect the letter. So it's to get that relaxed connectivity, and then the eye and the mind have to do the precision and the touch sense, how much pressure you put on a nib, so it doesn't cut and doesn't slide and doesn't jump. And occasionally I might get one word that actually works where that's happened. And you see, that's where my mind pushed. That's where it dragged. That's what I got to in a hurry. You see the little waverings. You can read it. So it's something I do rather rarely. It's quite, for me, it's quite an interesting exercise in just that precision, attentiveness, whole body, mind, eye, mind, body, physicality, and material thing, external, flowing together. Of course, the other thing I like to do, and occasionally I show it to people, is qigong, which is similar. You've got to be relaxed, and yet there's precision. And so, these are kind of little side things I do. But I feel it's part of culture. Whether you do it or not, the main themes of, yes, there's something that has an end product to it, that manifests in the world. Something can actually be inspiring and gladdening and invigorating. It requires precision, learning, dedication, getting it wrong time and time again and coming back again, getting it wrong again, finding out why I've got wrong, time and time again. Never give up, don't be in a hurry, stay with it. And you're doing that, So I look into things like chanting to get the vowel sounds correct and the consonants correct and using the voice. And of course it just dissolves. As soon as you've done it, it's dissolved. As soon as you've chanted a word, it's gone. And that's beautiful. You're not hanging on, and yet the resonances and the quality of attention have gone into it. The qualities of attention, the resonance and the corporateness have gone into it. And that's what remains when the sound disappears. That's kind of what you want. Similarly, if we expand that in our duties, if our duties are carried through in that spirit, then when the duty ceases, the spirit remains. The self-discipline, the relaxation, the precision, the adjudicating the time pressures. So we're not lagging, we're not trying to be stiff and keep things still, we're not rushing forward, out of flow. And it's, I gotta feel that the external life is important for that, because you can then really see the results. When it's done corporately, you say, oh, it's not just for me, she gets it, she gets to say, yeah, he does too, yeah. I mean, her voice is slightly different from his, but still there's the same sense of the spirit behind it. And there is such a thing as harmony. And harmony is not mine. It's not me living my truth. It's my bit entering into this group field and listening to it, tuning into it and flowing with it. Could our actions be like that? For our own welfare of others, and for the benefit of future generations. And if we realise or get a sense of this, a good karma, and yet karma that leads to what? The diminution of obsessiveness and the diminution of negligence. The diminution of a sense of I am the most important, everything's me, and the diminution of a sense of I don't count. The sapurisa, or one of the phrases he used, sapurisa, the true person, which of course is not, as we said so many times, is the qualities that can get help as a person are straightened out, cleaned, and yet there is the sapurisa. So, and that's what generates karma, or good results. Kaya karma, vaci karma, mano karma, kaya karma, bodily karma, action, physical action, vaci karma, thought, speech, mano karma, inclination of mind. What does the mind specifically attend to, and how does it attend? The mind has attention as its function. How is that? Karma originates from citta, but it pours out through mano, through the thinking, through the observing mind, through the mind that inclines and focuses, through the mind to the speech faculty, and through the physical action. And notice this distinction between speech and mind. Speech is verbal, but also there's such a thing as even the inclinations. What do we give attention to? What does the true person give attention to? Because whatever we give attention to and make the dominant concern of our minds, that's going to affect what comes into our hearts, and so on and so on and so on. When you somebody should begin to recognise this sense of why does one Why do we cultivate restraint? Why do we do entertainments, beautification, adornments, music, theatre shows? What's wrong with that? It's not evil. No, it's not evil. Definitely not evil, but what are you giving attention to? And attention is such a precious, crucial faculty. What we'll talk about and what we will engage with, that, it's kind of irresponsible to just waste it on trivia. Well, this is not, for lay people, this is not a moral rule. Absolutely, it's not a moral rule. But it's something to, reflect upon what entertainment is about. It's making us feel happy, perhaps a social occasion, making us feel agreeable to others, it's social, pleasurable without being corrupted. Yeah, that's true. Could those needs be met through corporate acts of goodwill and qualities of cultivation that give rise to comfort? And this is one of the themes of meditation, is to experience one's own happiness. Happiness of a mind that's void of regret, happiness of a mind, a heart that sinks, settles into deep areas of absorption, refinement, softly regenerated, and what that takes. So we give our attention into how do we clear our own inner domain from anxiety, regret, depression, heedlessness, harshness, arrogance, these taints, however subtle they may be. So, this must be one of the ongoing topics of cultivation, to even be able to, so our external duties don't distract from cleaning out, keeping the house clean. And then you can see how it can be that way. People kind of go out because to be where they are in themselves is just too uncomfortable. The average uncultivated person, if they've got nothing to go out to, like we're in the COVID epidemic, uncultivated minds, really violent, more domestic violence occurred, people just can't manage without something to go out to. The idea of not being able to go out for a meal, or go out to watch a movie or something, or have a drink, or play golf or something, go to football, just then all this kind of unprocessed stuff just and that's where you start to see how leaning on the external world is unskillful. Learning to be independent of it is skillful. But to be independent or autonomous but not unconcerned. So here we got Cittaviveka, for example. I'm always pleased to recognise, we look at the local neighbourhood, how we can help out. We always have done. When the hurricane in 1987, all the trees were blown down, it was the monks who went out with the chainsaws and cleared the roads. cut the tree, or the fallen. They went out there and cleared the lanes. So civic duty. We look into things like our local Rother eco group. We need to, aware of ecological issues and so forth, and being able to also, when we have excesses, to give what we surpluses to people in need. And it seems to be just so heartwarming to realise one's part of, touching the external world. Also just recognising we're in a situation, human condition, there's a lot of damage. So, aware of child abuse, present and inherited, sensitivity around young people, how we affect young people. Also, people come in carrying a certain amount of difficult stuff that you can't just say, just let go of it. If you're experiencing trauma, you don't just let go of it. It takes a lot of careful work and encouragement and embodiment, and to be able to kind of allow some of these dark feelings and moods to arise and be carefully attended to with care and compassion. So we should be, careful of just adopting too many slogans. So then you don't realise, if you're not traumatised, you don't realise what it's like. If you're not suffering from depressive tendencies, you just don't realise. I've personally had a pretty easy ride in this life, so I can easily say, it's just stuff. And then you listen. So a lot of my teaching has been very much supported by listening to people, and listening to people's difficulties and places where there's certainly a lot of sincerity, a lot of commitment, just stuff that is very difficult. Then you don't get so dismissive about the person, just a personal thing. Yeah, there's a karma. So you cultivate and you listen to the world, and we're keeping your attitudes refreshed. And to refresh those, that's going to be for one's own welfare. This is how it works. And recognizing, is the Buddha's inheritance. It was amazing that when you even get an inkling of what this person achieved for themselves, what they, on their own, and you see the depth and the detail of what this person revealed. It's just staggering, without any instruction. I can't fathom it. I get bits of it, but some of it's just like, wow, that's going to places I haven't got to yet. Perhaps never will. But even that is amazing. But we kind of can look at that with some sense of awe. Sometimes even, I can't get there. But the other thing, that we've inherited the Buddha's good karma. It wasn't just his own realization, it's just the amount of time and effort, unrelenting, to spreading his teachings in any way he could. Vinaya, a sense of real awareness of cause and effect of each individual's behavior. Not just for themselves, but how, for example, how the monastic affects the lay people, really moderating that. Careful of the tendency to abuse or overreach or destroy people's faith. So looking into that. You can kind of look at Vinaya, it gets into sort of nitpicky details, which some are good, some perhaps are getting a bit, stuck on the words or intricacies, but the overall sense of precision of one's bodily actions, one's speech, one's mental attitudes, oneself and towards others, is an exemplary aspect of what the Buddha left us with in concrete terms. In not just personalization, but look at this area. Look at what possessions you have. Look at how you receive people's offerings. Look into that. Don't take it for granted. Be careful. There's a lot in that. Any one samana represents the entire group. Any one can destroy the reputation of the entire group, or impair it. And the world needs something to lead it out of ethical fog and confusion. So then you train yourself with some urgency. And the Buddha, of course, left these Dhamma teachings, which we have these various lists of things. They're always good to keep returning to and integrating in how we make those alive. So not just recited lists. What does Dhamma Vicaya mean? What does Sati mean? Where is Piti? Where is that quality of joy and ease? Where's that? How does that arise? So, and why? Because these are ways that we clean out and clean and fortify the citta. And not just some kind of antique document, but in the here and now. And really, then I think, as Luang Por Sucitto once said, we're all translators. You have to take some of these Pali words, even some of these English words, and translate them. I said, this actually, sankhara as an experience is this. The word is a bit difficult, but the experience, is this. It's about the doing, the shaping, the forming, the energy that generates things, and how it creates solidities out of what are really dependencies, out of what are really foggy, misty. It creates solidities. That's it, called a sankhara, that which kara creates, brings things together. It brings mutually dependently arising factors into a seeming unity, called me, or you. And it really kind of like looking into that. So one can get into some of these terms, but really, how does this feel? What does it mean? And is that not quite? Yeah, that's near it. Wait a minute. And so you're really trying to translate the texts and the words into living experience, that you can keep the Buddha's gifts properly polished, properly put in the right place, properly presented. To me, this is all part of the duty. The sankharas don't cease when you step outside the meditation hall. They're still running. Attention, intention and contact are still alive and well once you get out of the hall. When you go to a meeting, they're still there. When you pick up a broom, they're still there. When you forget to put it in the back, they're still there. Heedlessness or heedfulness is still there. Where do we kind of isolate? That's the meditation. I get really super, intense about this bit, and then there's the rest of it where I kind of, just get along and try to, really review the meanings of some of these terms so they can be alive and well when we walk them out into the world, because that's where it really starts striking how genuine is this. If you can't walk these qualities outside the hall, how real are they? How genuine are they? So then where does the hindrance occur? It doesn't just sit when you sit in meditation. It occurs when you start to talk to people, or you start to do the washing up. That's where it occurs or doesn't occur. So you're constantly tuning in like that, and you see the places where habits can get blurred and blinded and automatic. Oh, I do this, I don't do that. That's his job. No, it's everybody's job. Alertness is everybody's job. Naturally, our renunciant life and why we don't, I guess we all have our ways of, if you like, entertaining ourselves, but there's a sense in which I have only so much capacity, really. In my energies, I've only got so much energy. I've only got so much capacity to really be, get into attention. And I only got so much capacity. I don't want to squander it. I know my resources are limited. And certainly, as I age, that becomes more evident. I just can't do, the calculation, the speed of mental calculation. I just can't get there. Doesn't, So, you just kind of realise there's times where you just have to just stop, rest, regenerate, refresh, and deal with other issues, the aging process itself, and the health issues that all of us, we don't start aging at 60, we start aging at day one. And so dealing with changing health, and bereavements, which are not small, and being blamed, which is not a small experience, a kind of life experience. So these are all areas where you just got to keep enough potential to be able to handle the unexpected that you can be sure will happen. When you slip over and sprain your ankle, when the guest has a psychotic episode, the unexpected that you can be guaranteed. So if you've got enough slack, enough potential to be able to include that. So there's this need to just not use up one's energy. Keep your hearts and minds and bodies carefully exercised, refreshed. This is all, so it helps, I think, when we really understand the responsibility and the urgency of it, to moderate our culture corporately and individually. And then these retreat periods, what we call retreat periods, become essential aspects, just as breathing in is as important as breathing out. And yet, you have to have both. So let's continue our cultivation in this particular form, in this period of time. And I'm sure as we come to conclusion, we'll have fuller way of expressing our gratitude for all of the supporters. And we'll leave that until tomorrow. Anyone?
Namayang Dhamma Varakataya Sadhukarang Dadama Se